So I'll just start by introducing myself briefly and then we can carry on. I'll also stop my video because my Wi-Fi is all haywire and I don't want my internet to stop in between. So I'm just going to do that. Yeah. So I'm based in New Delhi and I currently head the Conservation Collection Management Department at Devi Art Foundation. So I'm also part of the committee that um, sort of deals with a lot of acquisitions and disposals and displays and everything. And being an oral historian, I think I try to have that lens of intersectionality when it comes to collecting contemporary art. And I think collecting contemporary art through the lens of decolonization is a powerful and transformative approach to art acquisition. And I think it seeks to address a lot of historical injustices and challenge the dominant Eurocentric narrative and promote more diverse voices in the art world. And this process, I think, would involve recognizing the complex dynamics of colonism and imperialism and actively working to dismantle their lingering effects on art collection, curation, and representation. So I think I would like to start by just discussing what institutions around the world are trying to enable themselves and how they're doing it to touch such sensitive subjects. The first one, oh gosh, yeah, yeah. So the first one would be the Reimagining Captain Cook exhibition, I think 2018, the British Museum. And this exhibition, it presented contemporary artworks and perspectives from Pacific Islanders that challenged the traditional narrative surrounding Captain James Cook's voyages in the Pacific. It aimed to offer a more nuanced view of these encounters. And here you see a painting called Cookie in the Cook Islands by New Zealand artist Michael Tufte. It depicts a stern-faced cook in a raised position above a bay where his ship waits at anchor. His face is flanked by a yellow hibiscus, the national flower of Hawaii, is transmogrified with Polynesian features, and the landscape too is in a state of transition. Sky and sea are painted black, omens of a gathering storm. The image is an individual's vision, Cookie's relationship with Tafri, which is interpersonal. And I think this is a great example of how institutions are challenging Eurocentric narratives through contemporary art curation. The next example would be Perez Art Museum in Miami. And they have dedicated a and diversifying their collection and I think engaging with artists from historically marginalized communities like Latin and indigenous artists. The museum's collection and it reflects a commitment to presenting a more inclusive and representative view of contemporary art. Another example would be Peggy Copper, and everybody knows her. Her collection of African American contemporary art, it included works by artists like Sarah Walker, and she used her collection to engage with issues of identity, race, and social justice. And she was a great example for collectors out there who want to collect art through the lens of decolonization and race. She had an intersectional lens and supported artists who aligned with her vision. And the last example I want to share is the Manchester Museum. I recently visited the new South Asian gallery, which beautifully tries to engage with subjects like colonization and partition. Um, Now, of course, there are potential pitfalls that can arise if the practice is not approached thoughtfully, ethically, and with a genuine commitment to addressing the underlying issues of colonism, power, and representation. Responsible collecting should involve deep engagement with artists and communities, ethical acquisition practices, and a commitment to broader social change beyond art collection. Here are some of the issues like tokenism. While we see various examples of collectors and institutions trying to address their collections through an intersectional lens and commission work that challenge the Western narrative, I feel it becomes counterproductive after a point. There's a risk that in their pursuit of decolonization, collectors may tokenize artists from marginalized communities, and this can reduce complex cultural expressions to mere commodities and reinforcing historical patterns of exploitation. So art becomes a way for collectors to demonstrate their own progressive values without necessarily engaging deeply with the underlying issues. Another issue I feel is cultural appropriation. While the intention may be to support decolonization, there is a danger that collectors engage in cultural appropriation when acquiring and displaying art from indigenous or marginalized communities. This occurs when art is divorced from its cultural context and treated as a trend or fashion statement rather than as a meaningful expression of a cultural identity. Collecting art that addresses decolonization can commodify the struggles and experiences of marginalized communities. The art becomes a marketable product that may not necessarily benefit the communities it represents, perpetuating an exploitative dynamic. I feel this is where oral history can come in and serve as a great tool to bring forward the struggles of the communities and artists. Collectors who focus solely on acquiring decolonized art may engage only superficially with the broader issues of colonism and social justice, and this can lead to a limited understanding of the complex histories and ongoing struggles of marginalized communities. And while collecting contemporary art is valuable, it should not replace the need for structural changes within the art world and society at large. Critics argue that focusing solely on art collection may divert attention from broader systematic issues that need to be addressed to achieve meaningful decolonization. And lastly, I would just briefly like to talk about how what institutions can really do. First would be having historical context before delving into contemporary art collection. It's essential to understand the historical context of colonism and its impact on art. Second would be to educate yourself and about the cultures, history from which the art they are interested in originates. This includes understanding the nuances of indigenous art forms, traditions, and the artists behind them. Supporting artists is an impactful way. Um Having a global perspective, avoiding centering the collection solely on Eurocentric art and instead focusing on art that reflects the global human experience. Collaborations, I think collaborating with curators and art institutions that prioritize decolonization efforts, and these institutions they often engage in critical dialogue, the evaluation of collections, and initiatives aimed at giving voice to marginalized communities, promoting ethical engagement. This includes respecting their cultural context, obtaining informed consent for exhibitions and reproductions, and ensuring fair compensations, and creating inclusive art spaces. So just having a space where artists and people of the community can come in and feel seen and heard. And lastly, I would just like to say that collecting contemporary art through the lens of decolonization is not just about acquiring beautiful pieces, but also about actively participating in the broader project of dismantling colonial legacies and fostering inclusivity and equity within the art world. It involves a commitment to ethical engagement, cultural sensitivity, and a recognition of the complex histories that surround art acquisition. That's it for me. Thank you.